Hello and welcome to this ETETutor video on Animal Farm. Today we're looking at how to tackle character GCSE exam questions, and we're focusing on how to create a plan. The information here builds on part 1, getting started, so if you haven't watched that video it might be worth doing that now. Okay, let's get going. So today we're using the same example question as part 1, the EdXL one, but it doesn't matter which example you're studying with, there's still going to be useful information if you've got to write about Animal Farm. Okay, so have a quick recap on the question and then we'll get started. Okay, so in part 1 we went through this list of bullet points, so what I'm going to do now is show you the key facts that I'd selected and the quotes that I'd thought of and how I've matched them together and put them into a plan. Okay, so on my left I've got my key facts, on my right I've got my quotes. I'm not going to read all these out for you because I know nobody likes to watch really long videos, especially when you're revising. So have a read through the quotes, hit the pause button if you need to. I will talk you through the key facts because obviously this is information that you could apply to lots of different questions. It's not just about Boxer. So, Boxer is Orwell's most sympathetic character within the novel. He's the heart of the novel. He's the character who reduces many readers to tears. So that's very important. I am going to try and include that in my response. He's also a likeable and well-liked character. But what's really important in terms of thinking about the context of the novel is how Boxer's being used. Boxer, this anthropomorphised cart horse, is being used to represent the proletariat. Now, we haven't got time to go into great detail here. Hopefully that term already means something to you. If it doesn't, go off and do a little bit more research. But basically what you need to know is that Orwell is exploring the proletariat through his depiction of Boxer. Okay, Boxer was actually named after the Boxer Uprising, which was a Chinese rebellion that started communism. So obviously communism's another one of the things that Orwell's keen to make us think about through the novel. It's quite ironic that Boxer starts the uprising in China, whereas here Boxer is involved in the uprising but ultimately meets his fate because of it. Okay, another thing to think about with Boxer is that he's not very intelligent, and we could use the key fact that he can't read to support this interpretation. Because he's not that bright, he's following an ideology that he doesn't fully understand. He can't comprehend it. His commitment to this ideology, however, is the strongest out of all the characters. His hard work and his brute force is vital to the harvest efforts. And people have drawn a comparison here with Alexander Stakhanov, who was a heralded Soviet worker. So again, it's bringing across that idea that Orwell wanted us to consider the Russian Revolution through his animal fable. Okay, we can also think about the fact that Boxer thinks he's going to be happy in the end due to all the propaganda that's been put out there. And he uses those maxims: I will work harder, Napoleon is always right. And these are the things that help to motivate him for this deferred gratification of having a lovely retirement. However, his trusting nature makes him very vulnerable, and ultimately his adherence, his going along with the pigs' regime, their rules, proves fatal. It results in his death. At the very end of the novel, the pigs toast a Boxer, and they do that using the income that they gained by sending Boxer to be slaughtered at the glue factory. This part obviously made me really angry because I've got those caps locks there, that it's the final insult. The pigs get luxury and pleasure through Boxer's death. It's also interesting to think about Old Major's vision at this point. When he first came up with animalism, he described that alcohol should be forbidden, and we can also remember at this point that animalism is being used to reflect Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto. Again, if you're freaking out at this a little bit, just do a bit more research. It's not difficult. Okay, and then finally we could say that at the end of the novel, the readers are left questioning what Boxer could have done if he had rebelled against the pigs. Okay, like I said, we've got some quotes along there, and you'll see those matched up to the key facts. But what I'd suggest you do now is pause the video again and see if you can do it yourself. Can you work out which bullet point on the left can be supported with evidence from the column on the right? How could you use these quotes to make these points? Okay, good luck with that. Right, so this is how I put it all together. I'm not saying this is the only way that you can work, it's definitely not, but if you are struggling, it's worth giving this a go. You've not got anything to lose. So, also at that point, when reflecting on those ideas, I tried to work out my personal response, so I'd be able to put some bullet points down in my plan for my introduction and my conclusion. And it's really important to think about that personal response at the beginning, because that's going to help you work out what order to arrange your sections in. Okay, so overall, in response to the question, explore the significance of the character of Boxer in the novel, I'm going to start off by saying he's a very significant character, and that it's a sympathetic portrayal, and it allows Orwell to question why rebellions fail. Okay, in this introduction, I'm also going to make sure I refer to some contextual details. I'm picking the points that relate to this question and the character of Boxer. So this isn't always going to be exactly the same. It's going to depend on the character or the topic that you're looking at. I'm also going to refer to some themes. Again, there's loads of themes. I've selected these two because I feel that they relate to the points I'm going to argue in the body of my essay. Okay, so section 1, which would probably end up being P1, paragraph 1. There's not an awful lot here. So in this bit, I'm going to talk about the anthropomorphized cart horse, describe him as an enormous beast, show how he's likeable and well liked by the other characters, mention briefly his intelligence, and add in that fact about the Chinese rebellion, linking it clearly to the idea that Boxer was terrifying during the Battle of the Cowshed. Then that's it really. Just a general introduction to the character, but one that's going to use key terms like anthropomorphized and irony, and one that's going to include quotations and events from the novel. Okay, in section 2, which again I think is probably just going to be the one paragraph here, one well detailed paragraph. Here, in terms of my little kind of snappy title for it, which won't appear in the essay, it's just for in your mind when you're planning, is Boxer's dedication. So here I'm going to talk about that fact that he's a follower of an ideology he can't really understand, and probably mentioning the impact of propaganda at this point as well, because that's important when we link it to the Russian Revolution. So I'll also mention his commitment again. I'm going to throw in that quote that he's unfailing in his attendance at meetings, which shows his loyalty, and that he believes the propaganda and he's motivated by this idea of having a happy retirement. Really, all the way through this section, reinforcing that he represents the proletariat, the workers within a society. Okay, and then I would come on to my final section, what happens to Boxer. This is at the end of my essay because it's covering the events towards the end of the novel. So at the beginning I'm going to mention foreshadowing, and we will have a quick look at this quote because it really is helpful. Another one from Old Major. So, you, boxer, the very day that those great muscles of yours lose their power, Jones will send you to the knacker, who will cut your throat and boil you down for the foxhounds. Okay, so as we know, this is exactly what happens. Major, who reflects Karl Marx, has a very, very negative view of the owners in comparison to the workers, and this comes across here, and it foreshadows the fact that Boxer dies in exactly this way. Okay, after mentioning that, I'd say in more detail that we get other clues. We see how his nature makes him very vulnerable, his use of those slogans, his unquestioning faith, and really how his inaction is leading to the pigs getting away with murder. It's what leads to capitalists being able to take advantage of the proletariat, according to Marx's theory. Okay, again, we've got another quote that really reinforces that. Describe how he can't recognise the pigs' corruption even after the dogs are being used. And then really just hit home with the fact that it's his adherence. He plays a part in what happens to him and what happens to the revolution. Finally, I'd come back to that point that I discussed in a little bit more detail previously, the idea that they toast, they raise a glass and benefit from Boxer's death. Finally, I know in my conclusion that I'm going to want to reinforce what I said in my introduction, so just come back to that personal response. I'll have convinced the examiner that my personal response is a valid one through my use of quotations throughout my essay, but I'm also at this point just going to throw them a little something extra to think about. So I'm going to cover why Boxer's the heart of the novel and what if. And you can learn more about this what if point in the next video. Okay, again, you're probably thinking that sounds good in theory, but I don't know if I could do it myself. You might also be thinking that you struggle to write introductions and conclusions. Don't worry, I covered how to write an introduction in part 3 and a conclusion in part 4. So you've got those resources available to you. And in terms of thinking you can't do it, all I can suggest is that you try. Have a go at putting these plans together. Once you've done one, you'll find it gets easier and easier. So just keep that motivation up. Think Boxer. Think you must work harder. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate you all. You might find the assessment objectives video useful, and use the space below to ask any questions and support your peers. All the best with your exams, and like and subscribe.